Hey, good afternoon. Well, I'm going to take advantage of a break in the rain to come outside and do our video together today with some beautiful fall color behind me. And today I want to bring a conversation that may feel a little dissonant with where you may be today and with the circumstances we see in our world. But I want to talk a little bit about accessing and savoring happiness as a absolute right and possibility for every one of us as humans. There's been a lot of research into the science of happiness, so there's quite a bit out there to lean into. But today I wanted to focus on some practices and maybe some obstacles that we each come up against. So before we even get going on this conversation, I'm going to ask you to do just two things. Number one is take a moment. Just come here with me and take stock of where you are currently. Where are you today? And in this moment, and your sense of happiness in your life, with yourself, with your circumstances, does it feel available to you? So that's the first, just taking stock. The second is to notice if perhaps it didn't feel so accessible. What would happen if you use the phrase, if only? What shows up? If only this were going on for me, if only my relationship looked like this, if I only had these means in my life, if I only lived in this particular place or had this particular job, if I only had this health or this body. Just notice if that comes up for you. So it's just an entryway into the conversation, which is really intended today to be a little bit about just how very natural it is with our negativity bias that we've discussed before for us to gravitate into a space of happiness being conditional. It's really cool that when we look at what is possible with happiness, because we have had, like I said, a heap of neuroscience and research around it, is that it's far more available and accessible than we may think. But it does take intention, it does take some practice, and you have to figure out for yourself what makes sense and how. So let's talk about that a little bit. So if we think about happiness, there's really two different definitions of happiness, particularly if we look at the type of happiness that we think of in our lives today. There's the conditional happiness, where it's a result of circumstances, it's a result of your experiencing pleasure through your senses. So it's ever changing and it's a result of those things and those conditions in your life. But then there's a bigger happiness, there's a more general happiness. And this happiness, there's a Buddhist term for it, sukha, it's a Pali word. Sukha is more of a happiness without any sort of cause. Instead, it's a general happiness. It's a free, open space that doesn't necessarily have to have any conditions associated with it. And really, they each come in different flavors and places, and they complement one another. So it's just interesting to say, all right, what's available to me, and do I want something a little bit more than what I've got access to today? And could I might lean into the practices and the ways of thinking that might develop my muscles and my awareness of sukha, of general happiness. Why do this? Well, because it brings balance to our lives and it helps us to navigate the circumstances which will inevitably be challenging on occasion, right? So we know that life is both joy and suffering. It just is. So could we find a way of being more at peace with realistic expectations? What? Realistic expectations that things are going to be occasionally great, things are occasionally going to be not so hard, and at other times there will absolutely be challenges and there will be pain and there will be grief. This is life. So with that, realistic expectations, how do we develop sukha? Well, there's a few things I want to bring to you. Number one is allowing. So part of that goes along with realistic expectations, which is that we allow for the circumstances of life to be. and not necessarily tense up against that something is going to go wrong, or that something is missing, or the if-onlys in our lives. Could we simply allow ourselves to be in a space that even when we are not in a good mental place and we're not feeling all so excited to be in the conditions that we are, can you recognize that in that moment that it's okay and that it's transient and impermanent? All things are. So can you be with it? Can you allow and not tense up against it and say, this is hard, but this is what's all right. This is what's good in my life. This is what I can draw sustenance from and strength. So you allow. And with that allowing, you relax and you allow experiences to move through you. You allow yourself to learn, and you move away from that negativity bias where we tend to go ahead and grasp and to hold on to things as if they will not change. So we lean into the potential and the possibility that things will move and improve, and that happiness is a possibility and could be right around the corner. So allow. The other is the power of gratitude, which we have talked about as well. And it comes in lots of different flavors, but I have an experience I'd like for you to try. One that's quite accessible. So if you're in a place where you can lower your eyes or close your eyes, I would love for you to bring to mind a person, a being, a circumstance, a place that brings a bit of joy into your heart, a sense of peace. And quietly to yourself, say thank you. Just be with that. Then let's try this again. Bring up another person, being, place, or circumstance. Feel it in your heart space. And very authentically say, thank you. Thank you. Come back. This is an opportunity for us to recognize some of the beauty, the good, the love that is in our lives, and to really come from our heart space and let that in, savor it, and say, thank you. It allows us to tap into gratitude. Very powerful way of shifting our brain and our body chemistry, and shifting us into a place in our being where we're feeling more open and aware to the good. That's important. And because we're ready to allow things to be both good and challenging, because they each have their place. The third practice that I would love to bring to you is, if you could, again, another thing to try is just to close your eyes or to lower your eyes down again. And maybe even place a hand on your heart and say, may I be happy. May I feel happiness. May I be happy. May I feel happiness. Be with that for a few moments and repeat that as many times as feels right. And notice what arises for you. Is there resistance? Is there a sense that you don't deserve, or it's not possible? Just notice what comes up. But equally notice when you're able to lean into it. And you do feel, yes, just that little taste, that little touch of, this is good. How nice that I'm wishing myself happiness. That feels good. So I think then what I'm bringing to you today is just the early little, just dipping our toes into the initial tenets of sukha, of happiness without condition or cause, that it is our birthright, it is our human innate possibility to be happy. Bringing our awareness to it more regularly helps us attune to it and balance out our negativity bias, allowing for the different circumstances, both joyous and challenging, to exist simultaneously in our lives, in our body, in our mind, is realistic. That is life. Yeah? To be grateful in all the ways that make sense to you to do so. And lastly, to take time to be in a quiet, compassionate space and wish happiness for yourselves. Know that it's absolutely attainable. So we'll build upon this again, but this was an initial conversation because I think that for all of us, it's a wonderful opportunity to have realistic expectations about what we have, where we're going, what we want, and that you can be happy right now with what you have and what you are and all of the good that already exists in your lives. So with that, I wish you much sukha in your life. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and I'll see you soon.